Bum bum bottom 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 bum bum doobie doobie da 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 doobie doobie da 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 doobie doobie da 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 bum bum bottom bum bum doobie doobie da 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 doobie doobie da 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 doobie doobie da 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 bum bum bottom bum bum bottom ba da 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 ba da
You are now in session with the Comic Book Couples Counseling Podcast. I'm Lisa Skullickson.
I'm Boo Gullickson.
And each month, we evaluate a different iconic romance within the four-color realm. In this episode, we're celebrating the spooky season with a new Marvel special presentation, Werewolf by Night. And we're chatting with filmmaker Michael Giacchino and Marvel Studios Director of Visual Development, Andy Park.
On the last episode, we promised we would be coming back from the Fantastic Fest Film Festival in Austin, Texas with some really cool interviews. But we did not know we were coming back with these two really cool interviews.
When Brad and I go to film festivals to write articles for Film School Rejects or whatever, we don't know how much we're going to come back to comic book couples counseling with like comic book related content. But I feel like this Fantastic Fest really yielded some good stuff.
Not only did we get this secret screening presentation of Werewolf by Night, which we're going to get to in a second, but you had films like Shin Ultraman, even a movie like Kids vs. Aliens, the new Jason Eisner film, has like an EC Comics flair.
Absolutely.
The Mike Mignola doc, Drawing Monsters, was playing through their online section.
That's right.
We've already reviewed that on the website. We love that documentary.
We're patrons for it.
But yeah, it's not always a comic book haven. But I think, movies and comic books, they're both visual mediums. We don't have to make excuses for talking movies on this podcast.
We're all multifaceted with our interests. Nobody is like just one medium.
Right. Well, what's really wonderful about the two conversations that you're about to hear is that Michael Giacchino and Andy Park, they're both huge comic book geeks. The reason we're getting a Werewolf by Night special presentation on Disney Plus this Friday is because Michael Giacchino is a massive Werewolf by Night comic book fan. He made this happen. He went to Kevin Feige and said, we got to do a Werewolf by Night thing.
And he's also a huge Fantastic Fest fan.
Yes.
So when he's like, I want it to play at least one time on the big screen, it's got to be at Fantastic Fest.
Lisa and I were talking about this just a few days ago. We can't escape Michael Giacchino.
He's everywhere.
We first saw him at Wolf Trap out here in McLean, Virginia. He did a screening of the 2009 Star Trek, which he conducted the orchestra.
That's right.
And that was an astonishing experience. And then, you go to Comic-Con. He's always at Comic-Con.
We saw him when we went to the Star Trek 50-year celebration.
And when we were at the last Fantastic Fest in 2019, he premiered his short film, Monster Challenge, with Patton Oswalt.
Right.
And we've always dreamed, we would just actually like some proper face-to-face time.
Quality time.
And get into his craft, and suddenly we were gifted that through Fantastic Fest. And the secret screening, the first secret screening. And these secret screenings are always an event at Fantastic Fest.
Everybody is looking to get that secret screening ticket on their docket. And leading up to each screening, the festival is like a buzz with trying to figure out what the secret screening is going to be, because it's usually like a pretty big prestige film.
Right. Past secret screenings we've seen have been The Death of Stalin, Suspiria.
That's right.
And Knives Out last year.
Yes. That was a very tough screening for me.
Yeah,
as an emetophobe, we don't need to talk about it.
We don't need to get into your emetophobia, but Lisa got into that secret screening, and I did not. I went and saw the Showgirls doc, You Don't Know Me.
But I ruined Knives Out for everyone sitting anywhere near me.
But that's water
Neither
under the
here
bridge.
nor there.
So, yeah, everyone's buzzing what is going to be the secret screening. And there were some big guesses. Ryan Johnson and Karina Longworth actually were at the festival festival on the opening night or the second night.
So everybody's like, it's definitely Glass Onion. We know.
Yeah, and then but people were going like, well, I mean, Ryan Johnson could have just been there to be supporting his bud Noah Segan. He's got his new movie Blood Relatives, and then people were going like, no, it's got to be Hulu's Hellraiser.
That's right.
And the second secret screening was Hulu's Hellraiser, but no one in a million years thought that the first secret screening was going to be Werewolf by Night. And you go into that theater and everyone around you, it's a sold out crowd, and it's like 4 or 5 theaters all showing the secret screening. So all of these theaters are packed. Everyone's on the edge of their seat. And then the programmer, Anik, comes out and she starts to announce the title. And then overhead through the PA system, we hear a howl. Oh! And then on the screen, we get the poster for Marvel's Werewolf by Night. And I'm always excited for a secret screening. I have never been more excited than when this was announced.
As the representative Marvel zombies, we lost our minds.
Yeah, we lost our minds. And it did like throw some people for a loop because it's not necessarily something that people were expecting. They're like, Marvel at Fantastic Fest? That's weird. But as Michael Giacchino said in his introduction, he couldn't be there in person because he caught COVID. And not to spoil anything, but then Lisa and Brad caught COVID. I'm not saying we got it through the Zoom chat.
But you know that viruses are sneaky. They're very tricky. They're always evolving.
So he's, telecasting into the crowd, and he's saying, like, Werewolf by Night really is the perfect Fantastic Fest movie. And having now watched the film, Brad and Lisa, we agree.
It's a huge celebration of Giacchino's love of those Universal monster movies that he'd watch with his brother on Saturday mornings or whenever those happened.
I mean, he tells us.
Yeah, he tells us. I'm getting into spoilers. But, like, it's campy. It is black and white.
It's
weirdly.
gorgeous.
So beautiful.
Yeah.
It's super nostalgic.
It's crazy bloody.
And really violent for a Marvel movie.
Decapitations, limbs getting severed.
But when you think of it in terms of this is a Halloween special, we want to get into those feel-good, warm and fuzzy, kind of spooky Halloween vibes. Like, this is it.
It's a perfect cocktail, right? It's a perfect Fantastic Fest cocktail. It's a perfect Halloween cocktail. It does not feel like any other Marvel movie, and I love that. I think Marvel right now is really experimenting with the types of tones they can inject into their franchise, and that's really exciting. And what we get with Werewolf by Night truly is a unique MCU experience.
We stumbled out of that theater totally elated.
Yeah.
And then we immediately started searching the crowd for other glowing faces because we knew that they were our people, the Marvel people.
Yeah, and Fantastic Fest does have, like we were saying, like a lot of comic book geeks there. One morning we saw some random stranger reading the Walter Mosley, Tom Riley, The Thing comic.
Yep.
And we're like, well, we need to become friends. But
kindred spirit.
he was engrossed in that book and he didn't want to talk to us.
You shouldn't interrupt people while they're reading.
I was just so excited. But yeah, you find like your friends who are also just glowing, like Lisa said. And one of our pals was Raphael Montemayor. You should all be reading his pop culture journalism. He's fantastic.
Yes.
And we were geeking out, and he's like, Brad, did you get the email? And I was like, what email? He's like, check your email. And I checked my email, and there's a message from Disney, and it's like, hey, Michael Giacchino's doing a few conversations with folks who are interested. Are you interested? And Lisa and I, our heads exploded.
We sent a hell yeah email.
A hell yeah. And the next day, we got to chat with Michael about Werewolf by Night. It's a short conversation. He was doing a ton of interviews. It's like a little more than 10 minutes. But it is an intense 10 minutes, and it's a very geeky 10 minutes. And there's nothing in this conversation that spoils the experience of Werewolf by Night. So if you haven't watched it on Disney Plus yet, which it's not available till the 7th, but if you have not watched it, don't worry. You can listen to this conversation. We don't spoil anything that's
not in the trailers.
In the trailer.
So Man-Thing is in the trailers, so he does come up.
We gotta talk Man-Thing.
He's amazing. amazing.
So cool.
And Giacchino took a unique approach to shooting this CG monster.
Yeah, it's really, really something special. So I think that's all we need to say about the Giacchino side of things. The other surprise to our trip to Fantastic Fest is we actually kicked things off with another Zoom conversation with a Marvel Studios titan, Andy Park, the former comic book artist. Not the former comic book artist, but like that's where he came up in the world. He came up through comic books, and he has now become the director of visual development at Marvel Studios. When they revealed the Thunderbolts at D23, that artwork that has been circulating online, that is Andy's work. He is a concept designer. All the characters that you see on screen pass through his brain at some point. And we got to chat with him about his process.
Andy Park's art is so synonymous with Marvel Studios and those films that I don't even really think of them as like art. I think of them as like real photographs of our Marvel heroes.
I totally understand. I get what you're saying about that. And, the first time we see these characters is often through Andy's art. We talk about this with him, but the first time we ever saw Captain Marvel was at Comic-Con, and they introduced her costume through Andy's piece. And so when I think about these characters, often the first images I see are actually Andy's images in my mind, and I have to go, oh, yeah, that's concept art.
Yeah, we get so distracted of that's the actor and that's the costume and this is what we're going to see. We don't even take the time to celebrate the hand that crafted that image and the team that came together to make that iconic Bazow.
Yeah. So
picture.
Lisa and I are truly honored to have these two nerds on our show today. We cannot thank them or Disney enough for allowing this to happen. And we hope you enjoy this conversation as well. Please share it with your friends, retweet it, put it on Facebook, put it on Instagram. Let people know that these are the types of conversations that you can get on Comic Book Couples Counseling. And I think on that note, we should just get into our chat with Michael.
Sure.
I am great. How are you doing?
Wonderful. You're on with Brad and Lisa.
Hello, Brad and Lisa. How's everything?
Great. I don't think we've ever been more excited to have a secret screening reveal than we were last night.
We lost it.
We lost
Really?
it at that theater.
I am so bummed I couldn't be there. Last week I got COVID and I was like,
How's your vid? How's it going?
It's fine. I feel way better now, but I'm still, still testing positive. I don't know how long that's going to last, but now I'm at the stage where it just feels like the end of a cold or something. So, I did get to listen in over Zoom. And so I did get to hear everyone's reactions during the film and all of that. So that was fun to hear.
Yeah. It went really, really well. I guess like where we wanted to start was with your relationship with the comics as a kid. Werewolf by Night, it has its fans. I read some as a kid, but not a lot. What was it about the books that really resonated with you?
Well, my brother and I every Saturday would watch monster movies. That's all we ever did, and it was like a religious experience for us. We would, no matter what, be in front of that television. We grew up outside of Philadelphia in New Jersey, and we watched Creature Double Feature. And so anytime, even if we were at like 7-Eleven and we would see the comic book rack and I would see a monster comic, I'd be like, grab it. That's what we would grab, and it would be Werewolf by Night. It would be, Tomb of Dracula. It would be whatever it was they were doing at the time. And those became some of our favorite ones. And we had the book and record of the Werewolf by Night. I had all that stuff, I still do. Actually, my mom saved everything. So, it was just a big part of my childhood. So when Kevin said, hey, if you're going to direct, what do you want to direct? And I was just like, Werewolf by Night. That's it. That's what I want to do. And he was like, really? And I was like, yeah. So I explained to him why and what it meant to me. And he was just like, all right, well, let's figure it out. And we did. And this is kind of where we went. So you can see when you watch it, it's a huge love letter to all of those things. It's not just about the comics. It's about all of the monster sort of things that have been made over many, many years, you know, starting with the Universal, moving into the Hammer stuff, going into things like Poltergeist and, you know, I Ghost Story, all of those things. I just love, it was always fun being scared, you know, and every time you do it, you're always saying, I'm never going to watch another scary movie again. But of course, the next week you were right back doing it again. So, you know, that's where it all kind of came from.
In that conversation with Kevin Feige, he was surprised, and like in that conversation, did it take some convincing to go, this is where we should go next with these things?
No, he was very much into it. It was something I think that, you know, I don't know how much thought they had put into that side of their catalog yet. You know, there hadn't been much discussion about that. So it was one of those things that was like, if I was going to do something, I wanted to do something that had been untouched. I wanted to do the thing that had the most chance of failure, you know, because that was exciting, you know, to get into something that I don't know what to do with this yet. Let's figure it out together. And that was the fun of it. They had done such brilliant work on the superhero side of things. And I honestly didn't know what I could add to that. Like, I wasn't sure, what do I do beyond what you've done? It's already so good. I said, but this was an area that not only do I love and have such an affinity for, but it's ripe for just discovery. Let's see what we have and let's see what we can do and try and do something unique and different. And the best thing we can do is surprise people by doing something that is just like so out there and so unexpected that, you know, let's just see what happens.
Werewolf by Night is so reverent and nostalgia forward. And I was wondering if this film being classified as a Halloween special versus like a movie, did that give you a little bit more license to be more celebratory and nostalgic?
I think so. I think, you know, that the fact that we were doing it in black and white, I think all of these things allowed us to tell the story in a way that was very different from what they've been doing traditionally, you know, and I kept pushing in those directions, you know, in terms of not just the black and white of it all, but the horror aspect of it all, like not shying away from the fact that let's just be scary, let's just be violent, but as long as we are always centered on the characters and the emotions and the empathy and the humanity behind all of this, I felt like as long as we did that, that gave us a lot of room to play in the other areas that we haven't seen in the Marvel universe yet. And so the horror stuff to me was like a big thing that I wanted to push as far as I could go. And they never said no. So I just kept pushing.
We love Man-Thing. Absolutely. He's a character that's just so precious to us.
Yes.
And
same. Same with me. I love him.
And what I love this subtext of Werewolf by Night of like radical empathy, like every creature deserves to be seen and heard. Can you talk a little bit about other like life lessons you feel like you've gotten by being a comic fan and a horror fan?
Yeah, I mean, look, I think any of us who love this sort of genre, we love it because of exactly what you said, this radical empathy. And if you look around the world today, it is the thing we are most without, you know? So it felt like, to me, the thing to explore. You know, I get so disheartened and depressed about the way everyone is sort of treated in the world today. If you're different, you're automatically shoved aside and either ignored or destroyed. You know, that is the way, that's the first approach. And I felt like, no, that's not how I want to do this. Even in monster movies, so many times the monster is the victim. They are attacked. They are the thing. Let's light a torch and chase them down. Let's try and kill it. Let's do that. And as a kid, I was always like, no, that's not what you do. You're supposed to help them. They need help. These are people with problems. These are not monsters. They're people. They don't want to be monsters. They don't want to be this thing. They're struggling with it. And if we can help them accept and see that we accept them for who they are, then maybe things could be different. So that's what I wanted this to be about. This idea of really looking beyond what is in front of you physically and seeing what is inside, and to show them in a way that wasn't just as a monster, you know, to show them in a way that was like, you see, these are actually people, you know, and there's that moment, which, you know, in when I don't know, you know, don't want to spoil anything for anyone who's listening to this, haven't seen it, But there's a moment when that is very clear, when that happens, you know, in the film, and you're like, oh, I get it. I see what's going on. And then you suddenly tune into them in a way that you wouldn't have tuned into them if it was just like, let's hunt a monster tonight, you know? Yeah. And so I think the idea of humanity and empathy and really looking at people for who they are is the most important thing we can put out into the world, especially today.
Yeah, amen. And I think, you know, some of the alterations or updates that you give to Jack Russell and the world of Werewolf by Night aid in that mission. Can you talk a little bit more about, you know, updating and modernizing Werewolf by Night for us?
Yeah, I mean, you know, like for me, and looking for who was going to be Jack Russell, like I never thought about like, oh, it's got to be modeled after what it was in the comics. And the comics were fun. I love the comics. I love it. But let's face it, if I had made a movie about a rich kid in Malibu who had all these problems with being a werewolf, like that's not going to fly, you know? So I wanted someone that embodied this complete humanity and empathy. And Gael was like, he was the only person I could think of. Like the only one. I was very lucky to work with him on Coco. I got to know him a bit on that. And when I started thinking about this, I thought he was the only person that I can imagine that could pull this off in a way that felt real, that felt like somebody you want to root for, somebody that you just have a built-in understanding and love for. He's like a modern day Buster Keaton, you know, in some way. And we always thought it would be fun to look, he sort of just makes it up as he goes in life. He's been alive for a very long time. We don't know how long he's been alive. I don't know how old he is, you know, and even the name, when I talked to Gael about the name, Jack Russell, he was like, I said, how do you feel about that name? And he's like, he said to me, he goes, oh, that's just one of many names I've had over the years, you know? So I love that he said that. And I love that that's the way he was thinking, because then that suddenly broadens the character out so much. You know, this is a guy who's been on the run for years, and who knows what it's like to live with that sort of affliction, you know, and if we can just kind of peek behind the curtains and understand that a bit, it'll help us.
In the Q&A following the film, you talked a little bit about how you were a kid making movies, like that was like your form of play. Yeah. And now you've made your homage to the creature feature. Do you think, and you were using practical effects as well, to kind of harkening back to those movies that you love so much. Like, do you feel like you can now appreciate those movies with a deeper level of intimacy?
Oh yeah. I think about them very differently. I mean, I always loved them, and I always loved the practical side of things, and but it was more as a sort of a film nerd type of way. Having done this and been on set and worked with all the makeup artists and worked with all the special effects people, all of that really gave me a much deeper understanding. And I feel way more connected to the people that made those movies back in the day than I ever did before. You know, when you're really doing it the way they did, we built sets, we did everything. I mean, it was just, when you walked onto those sets, it was always a magical moment. Like, I was like, whoa, this is so crazy. I'm here in the maze, you know, and the maze was huge. It was a giant soundstage, you know, it went all across the whole thing, and it had the mausoleum at one end. So we really, I just really dove into that. And I do feel like I had a much bigger spiritual connection to all of the people that were making these things, and an understanding in some way, because we made this pretty quickly, you know, like they used to do. You know, someone would be like, all right, here's $12,000, go make me a Frankenstein movie, you know, and they would struggle to go and make something not only that was visually thrilling, but also had meaning behind it, you know? And the best horror movies have meaning behind it. They mean something. I'm not a slasher fan. I don't like movies that are just about like some guy going around killing kids. It's not my thing. I need something that actually has meaning and thought and empathy behind it. And that's why, you know, movies like Poltergeist resonate with me, you know, movies like all of the ones we've just discussed resonate with me. Even watching old like Ultraman and Godzilla and King Kong, like those were movies that I always felt so bad for the monsters. I'm like, this is crazy, and everyone's trying to kill these things, and they didn't ask for any of this, you know, like they didn't. So I was always very confused emotions growing up watching those movies, you know, because I did have friends that were like, kill it, you got to kill it. And I was like, what are you talking about? Why would you kill it? Because it's different. Well, okay, great. And that's the world we live in, sadly. And but I'd like to try and do whatever I can to kind of push the thoughts into a different direction. So
Oh, you did it. I mean, Werewolf by Night does it. We loved the film. We enjoyed it so much. We can't wait for your next directorial effort. Michael, thank you so much for chatting with us today.
Oh, thank you. It was great talking to you both.
Yeah, take care. Have a good one. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Oh, look at this. We're talking in the middle of the show.
How weird.
We forgot to set that up. But hey, Michael Giacchino, what a cool dude, right?
Wasn't that the best?
I wish we had more time, obviously, to talk to him. There's a moment in the conversation, and I don't know if you can tell, but I am showing off my Man Thing t-shirt to Michael. It's a t-shirt illustrated by the artist at Chango ATX, link in the show notes.
Recently married.
Congratulations, Juan and Rod.
The cutest couple ever, after us, of course.
And there's just this moment where I'm showing off Chango's shirt to Michael, and it's all done visually. And Michael just lights up when he sees the shirt. And he's like, yes, that yes. That's the moment where he's going like, that's a cool shirt.
Brad, of course, screen grabbed it and posted it on Twitter. So
I'm not going to let that moment not be immortalized. But yeah, so, Man Thing geekery, comic book geekery, Universal and Hammer horror geekery. I'm very curious and excited for the rest of the world to see Werewolf by Night. I think it's going to be a certain fan's total jam. And it's, I could see it being at the top of some MCU fans' ranking.
That's the beautiful thing about a niche. Sometimes just the right thing just gets down in there and feels real good.
I think I'm being like a little defensive because not everyone on the planet is loving She-Hulk as much as we are. And I guess I can understand how it could not be for everyone, especially if you're a sexist jerkwad.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
But,
It's not for sexist jerkwads.
But we need more experimentation within the formula. That's what Marvel's doing right now with things like She-Hulk and Werewolf by Night, and I'm eating it up. I love it.
I, too, am loving She-Hulk, and I'm getting from it exactly what I wanted, exactly what I loved from Dan Slott's run of She-Hulk. It is Marvel's take on Ally McBeal, and it's amazing. But I have a little, strategy for those of you out there loving She-Hulk, but having to deal with the barrage of criticism it's getting from a certain contingent. When somebody says a criticism, and I got this from Dulce Sloan at the Women Who Kick Ass panel, the last Comic-Con.
That was such a good panel.
And that is to repeat the criticism, the sexist criticism back as a question. So, for example, from my real life, someone said, She-Hulk just comes across as a little girl bossy to me. And so what you say is, girl bossy? What do you mean by that? Or, I think that it panders to women. Panders to women? What do you mean by that?
Lisa used that technique in real life to somebody who we know and cherish and love, but they said that She-Hulk was too girl bossy. Lisa goes, too girl bossy? What do you mean? And then that person
shut down.
Could not answer.
Just crumpled like a flan in the cupboard.
But changing gears a little bit to set up our conversation now with Andy Park, it's so nice to talk to a fellow comic book geek about what it's like to translate these designs that you adore so much to the live action realm. And it means a lot to Andy Park that he gets it right. And not everyone feels the way that he does. And sometimes he has to challenge others and their opinions. I think Scarlet Witch needs a physical crown. She needs the Scarlet Witch's crown. A CGI crown won't do. And that's what this conversation is really about. It's Andy Park taking us through the process of why some costumes can be a little more exaggerated from what you see on the page, and why some other costumes have to be much closer to their source material.
Now imagine, as we are conducting this very professional interview, in the background is Andy Park's shelf of figures and hot toys, and it took our very willpower not to just, like, as he's talking, try to pinch and zoom to his background. What's going on back there?
And not just a shelf, a cabinet.
A built-in.
Like rows upon rows of figures. And one of the items on one of these many shelves is like a replica Ant-Man helmet. I wanted to reach into the screen and put that thing on.
He's living the dream.
Yeah, Andy Park is living the dream, and it's great to see, and it's great to hear about. And I'm really excited for you all to partake in this conversation as well. So on that note, let's get to Andy. Andy, how are you today?
What's up, Brad and Lisa? How you guys doing?
We're doing wonderful. We were at the San Diego Comic-Con Hall H when Captain Marvel was revealed using your art. And we were at D23 when the Thunderbolts came out using your art.
Nice.
And it was incredible for us, but it's got to be like unreal for you. Like your art is like the first reveal of these characters. What is that emotional experience like for you?
It's crazy because, I grew up in the 80s and 90s, right? So I grew up with Marvel Comics in particular. So I've always kind of dreamed about these characters. And if you're not aware, my original career was as a comic book artist. So I drew comic books for about 10 years before I started doing like concept art for video games and then for film. And I've been with Marvel for the past 12 years. So I'm honored. I'm so honored, deeply honored to be working in the VizDev team, which is a unique department in the film industry. And it's part of, it's all about Kevin Feige, right? And the leadership of Marvel. They saw something unique about what they had, and they wanted to create something that's different than just the Hollywood model. So part of that is our team. So initially created by Ryan Mannerding and Charlie Wen. So we have a history of like working on these projects, even a lot of times before there's any cast or director, or even we're working as the script is being written. So it's really cool because Kevin Feige has utilized us to, as you mentioned, to do early artwork for all these projects. Like what proof of concept? Obviously we're looking at the comic books, right? But what can the film adaptation look like? These characters come to life. So in Comic-Con, we've had a history of doing that. So for the first Avengers, we did a series, I think it was 6 or 7 posters that were interconnected. That was the first reveal of what each Avengers is going to look like. So between myself, Charlie Wen, and Ryan Mannerding, we did like Ryan did a Captain America, Charlie did a Thor, I did the Shield, Nick Fury, and Kobe Smulders, all that kind of stuff. And then, as you mentioned, Hall H, through the years, like there's been reveals, right? So Captain Marvel, and I was there at Hall H when seeing the artwork, being displayed up there. That's the first public showing of what the costume is going to be looking like. And then Kevin Feige up there announcing it. And then most recently with the D23, it's totally an honor, but it's totally one of those things where I'm like pinching myself because I've been working here for that long, for almost 30 projects now. But it's still surreal.
I was reading in another interview how when collaborating on the character of Shang-Chi, you were using those Marvel influences, but also you were using influences from like Bruce Lee movies. And I was just curious about when you're creating a visual for a character, like how do you create that palette of influences? Is it something that happens all at once, or does it come gradually?
It's really, as I mentioned, it's all about starting off with the comic books, right? So we always want to honor the source material, the geniuses, the hundreds of geniuses that have created these characters, right? And of course, starting with Stan Lee, Jack Kirby, Steve Ditko, and then through the decades, all the other artists and creators that have contributed to these characters, right? So we're always starting there. We're doing a deep dive into the decades of these histories, because of the histories of these characters, because as you know, where the Avengers started, when it was created decades ago by Jack Kirby and Stan Lee, and then where they are now, they've gone through a lot and they've evolved and they've had so many different looks and just their personalities have changed and their storylines have changed and their costumes have changed, right? With each artist that has depicted them. So we're doing a deep dive there first, but then, so we always want to keep that in mind and honor the history. But then we have, my job as a concept artist, character designer for these films is to take the story that we're trying to tell, because it's not a one-to-one translation. We're adapting, we're changing things up when necessary, and we're creating a new story, a new lore of these characters that we love, that the public loves. So I'm looking at the story, I'm having conversations with the filmmakers and the directors, as well as the leadership of Marvel. And from those discussions, as well as myself, as well as the team of artists that we have in the Viz Dev department, we're coming up with visuals, we're coming up with concepts of like what these characters not only can look like, what they can do, with their abilities, their powers. Obviously, Shang-Chi, as you mentioned, was one where we had a little bit more freedom to kind of reinvent the wheel on that character. So even with the rings, like Shang-Chi never had the rings. So we're changing things up when necessary. And even when there were rings in the comics, there was always rings on the fingers. But because we had Thanos so recently, it's a little too similar. So Destin, Daniel Cretton, the director, had the idea of like the rings, the training martial art rings, which are real things, but they're usually meant for training purposes to strengthen up the forearm and your striking abilities. And it's also like in Kung Fu Hustle, like used as weapons. So so we're taking all that influence, and then we're adapting it for like how can we make it our own. As well as when I'm designing the costumes and stuff, I'm doing a deep dive into just researching, like knowing that Shang-Chi is going to be Chinese, like that's going to be his background. I'm doing a deep dive into Chinese culture, symbolisms. That's how I came up with the idea of the eternal knot, having this symbol prominent on his chest. And then as the story evolved, knowing that this costume is coming from the mother and Tao Lo, then the idea of like, oh, we can put dragon skin as a form of armor because this has got a special, it's flexible, but since dragon scales are like strong, it serves as armor. So you're doing a deep dive into all of those things, even down to the shoes. That was an idea that I had, was like, that's one element that he like kept that's his own since he spent time in America. So he's from his background of being from Chinese heritage, but he's also Asian American, which is what I am. I was born and raised in the US, where my parents were from Asia. So taking all those influences and saying like, oh, that's why he should wear sneakers, because that's the one thing that would be kind of uniquely his own. So it's all about taking amalgamation of all those things and mixing it all up into a design that they would like.
You talk about how you felt there was a little more freedom with the character like Shang-Chi. Can you talk a little bit more about that? Do you consider characters where you can be a little more flexible with the designs versus like, Captain America's got to look a certain way because his iconography is maybe more entrenched in popular culture?
Yeah, I mean, Shang-Chi, definitely we had more room, just because, we knew from the get-go, that we were going to have more leeway in that storyline. We weren't going to be so beholden to the past. And also, just speaking for his costume, originally he was just, he looked kind of like Bruce Lee. So a lot of times he was just shirtless and wearing kung fu pants, right? And then later he had more of that jumpsuit, which I'm sure undoubtedly was more inspired by Bruce Lee, by like the Game of Death, his yellow jumpsuit. So, definitely I was influenced by that, trying to get that triangle motif that was on his chest area. But it depends on the character, right? Like Scarlet Witch was one that I got to design through the years, and I first tackled that on Age of Ultron. But that one, because I'm a fan of the Marvel comics and I grew up reading like West Coast Avengers, I'm like, the first image I painted up or designed was like, more comic accurate, and I even gave her the crown. But I did that knowing that it's going to get rejected because the story didn't call for that. She's just from Sokovia, so she was going to be wearing more real world clothing. So that's why I did designs of her having a jacket, but got to make it red, and all those little nods to the comic. Even in Civil War, I try to give her a headband to nod to her crown. But then, of course, eventually, the story led to her in WandaVision. Then I was like, I finally get to do like the more comic inspired. I had, so it really is part of the conversations of like how close we can get, but we do all of it. And every design we do, from Captain Marvel to Shang-Chi to Mighty Thor more recently and Thor, we do the range of like very comic accurate, and we push it all the way to like things that are very much pushed. And from there, we have discussions between the directors and the producers and Kevin Feige to find out where on the scale is right for this story.
At D23, I know you. I just at D23, I was listening to you at the Marvel booth, and you were talking about Scarlet Witch's crown.
Yeah.
And you were talking about how they originally thought that maybe we could do like a CGI, fiery crown or something like that. And you're like, no, we got to do a crown.
Yeah.
That important to you?
Because I'm an employee of Disney or Marvel Studios, but I'm at heart a fanboy, right? I'm a fan of Marvel comic books. I'm a fan of these characters. So I want to see them very much like how I saw them growing up, right? So I want them to look like how they looked in the comics, because that's what I fell in love with, right? So whenever I'm doing any assignment, I have to please, in my mind at least, I have to please like essentially 3 people. One is like Marvel, which is like Kevin Feige and the leadership of Marvel. 2 is definitely the director, right? And 3 is the fans. So that one's easy because I'm just like, I just look at myself. What, how do I please, how do I make myself happy? So I do designs based off of that. So yeah, so that was one where in early discussions, I could tell the leadership, they weren't sure. Between the director, the leadership, they weren't sure if they wanted to be a solid crown. And they were starting to lean towards just being like an effect. And then I'm in that room where I'm like trying to argue, like that's the soul voice being like, no, it needs to be like, I love that it's gonna go effect. Like it must do that, but it's gotta get solid, right? So of course, the way I sell it is in the artwork. So I'm doing versions upon versions of what the crown can look like. The one that you saw is just one of many, many versions I did that as well as effects, versions. So I'm very happy that, they landed with, let's do both, but it solidifies and it just completes that look for me.
Yeah.
Clearly, like what you do involves so much like back and forth. And I imagine that each submission that you make is like in and of itself, like an emotional roller coaster. Like, is there something that you've put a lot of energy into where you're like, I know this is definitely not going to be the one, or like, do you ever turn something in? I'm like, please don't anybody come back with anything else. Like what is the emotional experience like?
Yeah, that's a good question, because us as artists, like I talk about this with my other Viz Dev artists, like we have a unique job, I feel like, compared to just people out there, because our art is so personal to us. Like it's kind of like a musician, like when you or an actor, like when you perform or when we're drawing, we spend so much time, so much thought, and ourselves are put into each piece that we do. We're not just like willy-nilly doing stuff. There's a reason why we put every brushstroke and every design elements. So yeah, it's hard. You're creating it, right? You're creating it. So if you get kind of attached to each image that you do. So it is emotionally challenging. You have to develop a thick skin, because I go to those meetings and I present it in a room full of like 20 different heads of departments and leadership and the director, and I'll click through the images as I'm showing it, and I'll click on an image, and then a lot of times there's just silence. It's not like applause every time there's an image. Like there's silence because they need to just kind of mull it over, think about it. But you click on it and then you go to the next one. But when you click over an image on one of yours, you're like, that was sometimes like 4 days of like sweat and blood and tears and toil to try to come up with that idea. And it's just like, but that's our job. We just like, do something, it's not there to be, we're not taking them to a gallery show, right? Or helping them to find everyone's vision, and so in particular the directors.
Like the small way that I can relate to that is like I'm a musician, and a
Oh,
lot
there
of
you
what
go.
I do is like weddings and funerals, where it's like really it's meant to be like this like selfless service thing.
Yeah.
But are there certain works that you've done for Marvel where you go like, this is the like secretly like this is my best expression of myself as an artist?
Oh, like in a particular piece?
Yeah.
I mean, and that didn't make it? That's what you're asking?
Oh, or either way, or made it. It's
Oh,
just like,
okay. I mean, that's why I bring up Scarlet Witch, and because that one was one where, it was a long journey, because, through the years, she kind of always just had, she never really had like a full-on superhero costume. And for me, like, I really like the superhero costumes because I'm a comic book fan. So hers was always more of a jacket and, more, it was like heightened realism, which is cool. But then, you kind of always want that superhero outfit. So WandaVision was really special for me to work on that one. And then something I'll never forget is going to that like final costume fitting with costume designer Maya Rubio, and at Ironhead Studios there's a specialty costumers with Elizabeth Olsen, and seeing her in the costume, and then she put on the crown, and it's just like, whoa, it feels like you spent so much time with that look, as well as the toil of getting an approval, which is, it takes months and months to finally get an approval, and then working with the costume designer and the specialty costumers to get to that final look and to see it, realized, that's a really special thing. So that one was definitely, that one stands out.
Now, I know you can't talk about what you're currently working on, because I imagine you're working on like phase 9 of Marvel. but like, what is that distance? How far into the future are you?
I don't know how to answer that one. I can't get specific. Like, I can't say specifically how many years, but we're definitely a lot of times years ahead. But I don't. How many years? I can't say, but and schedules fluctuate and all that kind of stuff. So, but we're always juggling, and it's really hard to keep all these like secrets inside, because things that I know that are going to be coming out years ahead of time. I can't even tell like my family or my friends, because I'm like, I want them to enjoy it when it finally is released.
Are there like, as a fan, are there certain characters where you're just like dying for the opportunity to design a look for them?
I mean, for the longest time, like, I was always a fan of like the Avengers, and then finally getting to see Spider-Man. Man, that was crazy when that Sony deal came through. I remember we were working on Civil War. In the middle of that, that's when we were told, we were told Black Panther is going to be in this movie. And we're like, oh my gosh, that's amazing. And then they said Spider-Man is going to be in this movie, so that was an exciting moment. For me, I grew up an X-Men fan. That was in my teenage years. Then that became like my favorite. So, but then I was always sad working at Marvel Studios. I'm like, oh, Fox has it, But then, you obviously, the news about Fox. So I was like, oh my gosh. So yeah, that'll be fun one day to like, to see that on the big screen.
Andy, we can't wait to see it on the big screen. Thank you so much for hanging out and chatting with us today. We're huge fans. We love picking up the Art of books. We're always anticipating the next one. So it was a real pleasure for us to chat with you. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Yeah, those art books are a little late, but they're coming. They're coming.
Pre-order. We're good.
I know, the COVID thing.
Well, you have a great day. Thank you.
You too.
I can't help but imagine, like, right after we finish that interview, Andy Park closes his laptop, he leaves the room, and it's like night at the museum in there. All of these hot toys come to life and start battling each other.
Yeah, not only is that what I imagine, I think that might be what happens.
Yes.
Yeah, no, I definitely do.
There was magic in that room.
There was magic in that room. There was magic in that conversation. We had such a good time chatting to Andy. Yes, Lisa and I did try to get him to spill the beans on what he's currently designing.
We wanted that CBCC scoop.
But Marvel Studios is like, no, don't even tell them how far in the future you are currently designing. He's probably is on phase 10 and 11 by now.
It could very well be that he is still like working on phase 5 and they have to pretend like they have a long-term plan.
Yeah, I mean, that is the reputation, right? Like that Marvel and Kevin Feige are thinking 12 phases ahead. But I think what we've learned in the last few years is they're not as far ahead as we used to think they were. And that they are able to do a lot of improvisation depending on how people react to the latest entry in the MCU.
The last thing Andy Park wants to do is work on a phase 11 peanut butter barbarian just for him to end up on the cutting room floor.
You know, there's a time where I would have said, there's no way we're getting a peanut butter barbarian. But now that we've introduced Man-Thing, a peanut butter barbarian is not that far off.
The world is Andy Park's oyster. All of MCU is going to be on screen.
Yeah, so yeah, that is going to do it for our CBCC special presentation of Werewolf by Night, featuring Michael Giacchino and Andy Park. What an incredible thing to say. I hope you enjoyed it as much as we did. Our next episode is going to be our New York Comic Con recap. We will have at least one guest on. We've already recorded a conversation with writer-artist Matt Lesniewski about his new comic book, Faceless and the Family, launching on Zoop on October 11th. We've read the first issue. We love the first issue. We are big-time fans of Matt Lesniewski. Go read Static. Go read The Freak and the new issue of Mind Management Bootleg. All the issues.
Truly a brilliant artist. There is not anyone doing what he is doing.
Yeah.
It is so gorgeous and detailed and just amazing.
And I do feel like our conversation with Matt is a true counseling session because he does not believe that so many people would like his artwork. And we help him with some words of affirmation.
I don't know if we helped. We definitely was like, we got to the point where we're like, just accept our compliments, man.
The conversation was a lot of fun. We are heading to New York tomorrow with a fresh bill of health. Is that the phrase? Fresh bill of health? A clean bill of health, I think is the actual
fresh
phrase.
bill of health. The other one, we destroyed it.
Yeah, it's a fresh one because
nice
it's counterfeit.
Not counterfeit. We're taking it very seriously.
We are feeling great after our COVID experience. Lisa and I have never been sick together at the same time, and it was a true nightmare.
Yeah, after how long have we been together? Like 15 years?
Yeah, 15 years,
Still
Lisa.
having new experiences.
New experiences. COVID, thank you. But yeah, we're headed to New York Comic Con. We're going to come back with a New York Comic Con episode. And then after that, we will get back to the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, discussing the first 7 issues of Peter Laird and Kevin Eastman's comic book. And also, we got to say, like, you know, we're going to New York Comic Con and we're bringing these New York Comic Con CBCC exclusive stickers illustrated and designed by Elliot Dixon at Elliot Comic Art on Twitter. And he has on his TeePublic page put up the CBCC at NYCC design as well as the CBCC at Baltimore Comic Con design for sale. So you can own CBCC t-shirts through his TeePublic page. Link in the show notes.
Can you imagine being at Baltimore Comic Con and walking up to a stranger wearing our faces?
Can you imagine wearing our faces, walking up to our faces? Let's make that happen, friends.
It's funny because on my 2021 vision board, I did put CBCC merch
Yep.
and have done zero effort to move towards that end.
Yeah, but Elliot...
Boom, manifested.
Yeah, Elliot's going to make it happen for us.
The secret works, you guys.
Of course, you know, it's all that money goes to Elliot, so
Yeah.
support Elliot.
Yeah,
Well,
but you will be supporting us emotionally,
yeah,
though.
emotionally and putting our faces out in the world, and we need that.
And also, you'd be sparing us the embarrassment of Elliot putting up our shirts and then no one buying them.
Yes, so please buy Elliot's ZBCC shirts. But yeah, so that's what we've got going on. Hope to see you at New York Comic Con. And Lisa, how do we get out of this episode?
I know how to end this episode, Brad, with my favorite way to end all things, a musical number. Da, 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 da. Start spreading the news. New York, New York. I had to edit it out because I started at the very beginning of Sinatra's New York, New York, but then I realized it would be like way too long and nobody wants to. Okay, where can our listeners send their words of affirmation to you?
I love not responding in any way to Lisa's musical
Do you know
number.
what singers love for you to do when you sing to them? Just complete silence, not at all amused.
Well, Lisa, all listeners can send their words of affirmation to me, Brad Gullickson, at MouthDork on all social medias. If you have words of affirmation for our logo, you can send them to Aaron Prescott at A Cool Hand Fluke. And if you have some words of affirmation for our radical banner art and show posters, send them to Karen Charm at Karen_X-Men fan. Lisa, where can our listeners send their words of affirmation to you?
I am always doing a kick line and accepting words of affirmation at Sidewalk Siren on Instagram and Twitter. If you'd like to spend more quality time with us, you can subscribe to us on Podbean, Stitcher, YouTube, Google, and Apple Podcasts. If you'd like to get exclusive, you can join our Patreon, where you'll get more content, including weekly bonus episodes.
If you'd like to reach out and touch us electronically, you can email the podcast, cbccpodcast@gmail.com. You can visit our website, comicbookcouplescounseling.com, or follow us on Instagram and Twitter at cbccpodcast. And yes, I know you've emailed us a lot. I have a bunch of emails that I need to respond to, but again, we had COVID, we had Fantastic Fest, we had D23. I'm slowly catching up to those emails, and yes, I'm feeling shame about it.
You can give us the gift of 5 stars.
Yeah, but we still want those 5 stars.
on Apple Podcasts. That will be for the quality of our podcast, not for our
Outros.
receptitude of sending emails back.
Oh yeah, or that.
And if you'd like to do an active service, why not write a review of the show while you're there? We are fluent and receptive in all 5 love languages. It really warms our hearts and helps the pod.
So until next time, friends, keep your love tank full.
And your psychic rapport open.
Bum bum ba da bum bum ba da ba.
I'm leaving a pause because I'm about to say something weird.